Luke 13 and verse number 6. I know you stood a long time, and thank you for doing that. He spake also this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon, and found none. Then said he unto the dresser of his vineyard, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on the fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth it the ground? And he answering said unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I shall dig about it and dung it. And if it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after that thou shalt cut it down. Look at verse number 8. And he answered and said unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also. For just a little bit, I want to preach this year also. Turn to somebody and say, this year also. All right, you can be seated. If I'm looking around and you feel, don't feel conspicuous because I'm looking around. Y'all just look really good today. I don't know if it's the haze obscuring you, or you're all dressed up, you're all bundled up, you're all happy, you're a few more pounds than you had at the start of the holiday. And I mean, after Wednesday, everything comes down, all the lighting, all the holiday stuff is going to be gone. And maybe you're already through with all of that, or you're so relieved that it's all over. I don't know exactly what it is, but you do look very good today, and I'm glad that I have the privilege of being able to preach to you something I feel like would be helpful to you today. There is a suggestion in that 8th verse, this year also. It suggests retrospect. Obviously, when you say this year also, there must have been other years that you can look back on. In this case, it was a barren fig tree. And the dresser says, let me have one more year, this year also, meaning I worked around it prior to this. But he is pleading for another chance. I'm going to tell you this, and I don't understand this, and I wish sometimes I could just get a chair and sit out here on the end of this platform and just talk to you about just things that we deal with all the time in life, and maybe just stuff that would maybe be of some help to you. I tell you that as many things that people talk about, the benefits of having governmental help, or the benefits of having insurance, and the benefits of having this, and what are the benefits when you take that job, one thing that we very rarely ever give people the benefit of, and that is the benefit of the doubt. I don't understand why, but we're a very suspicious people. We are a very hurt-prone people. We are all living, seems to me almost, and let me take all of y'all out of it, but society outside these walls seem to be living with a perpetual chip on their shoulder, just waiting on something to come along to hurt them in some way, and that just seems to be the modus operandi of the day. But in this situation, he is pleading for another day, because there are times you mess it up in your early life. Everybody that messes up early doesn't mean they finish in a messed up condition. You are sitting today among people that have made tens of thousands of errors and mistakes and pitiful judgments until it is ridiculous that we are privileged to be in the place that we're in, because we've done so many ridiculously stupid things in our life. And if you have not, you're the exception to the rule, and you're almost next to Jesus. Because all of us at some point spoke when we should have been quiet. And we've said this, and we rushed to judgment, and we didn't give the benefit of the doubt. Or maybe we were young, and we had opportunity, and we squandered that. And we never partook of the things that we could have partaken of. In our early years, we lost our youth in the kingdom, and we moved on to another stage of our life, married life and children, and we left that behind, and it was lost. But I am telling you today, the Master says there's another year. And maybe you messed it up in your middle age years, or maybe in your senior years, you haven't done it the right way. I'm telling you, you need to break free of the paralysis of your past. I don't care that you had other years. Those years are gone. I am pleading this year also. What did we do with our youth? Was there any fruit in our youth? Listen, y'all, I look back on my life, and I want to confess this to you. I look back on my life, and I think, why did I do something so dumb as that? Why did I do those ridiculous things? We had a young guy that was coming to our church some years ago, and his name was Paul. And Paul was in our school, and mentally he was challenged. And we didn't have all the terminology. Please excuse this if this sounds crude or harsh or anything else, but we didn't have the terminology. They called the classes that Paul was in was called special education. And those that were in special education, when we were going to watch a film, 16 millimeter film about something, they would get the special education kids to come and show it to us. They set up the camera. Did anybody ever have that in the school? I know some of you, maybe you know what I'm talking about when I say this. You got your hands lifted there. Thank you. That's what we had in our school. They ran that. So they would get out of their class and they would go down, and they had a little locker where they would get the film and they would bring it in. They would set it up. And that's what, I don't know if they were training them in the audiovisual stuff, but Paul would be the one that operated that. Me and my buddy, Danny Smith, we came up with the idea that this wasn't a bad gig because you could get out of the class and you got to watch films all day long. But there were some other side things to that wasn't as good. But Paul, we tormented him to death. I think about this all the time, and I'm embarrassed and ashamed about it. I can remember tripping him and knocking his books out of his hand and all of the stuff that today might even be called bullying. But in those days, those were just kind of the normal thing, and it was the wrong thing, but that's the kind of things that went on. And oh, you should have seen how it was when Paul decided to come to our church. I didn't even know he lived in the area, and he came. He was talking about how wonderful I was and what a great friend I was, and that made me feel about that big. Because I thought, Paul, if I could get you some books, I'd carry them for you. That was stupid of me to do. That was the most ridiculous thing. And it's amazing what you do when you got friends around you. The power of the mob, people join in, and they're ugly and they're hateful. And back in those days, there was nobody there to give a sensitivity training or anything else. It was just all part of the ugliness of youth. When I passed that by thinking about how fruitful I could have been, but what I didn't do, I can't go back and capture that. But what I can do this year also, I can make some difference. I can't make it back there. I can make it now. I can make it here. I messed up my youth. Middle age comes along, and it's kids, and it's work, and it's all these things that you wish you would do and could do. And then you get into your senior years, and then it's like, man, I wish I would have spent time. And I tell young people this all the time, young married couples all the time, because they're just running through life so fast. And I'm thinking, you better slow this thing down. You're going to look back one day and wonder where the time went, and the things that are going to matter are the things you run over now are going to be precious later on. But what a new year reminds us of is unfulfilled resolutions, things that we were going to do, things that we had planned to do in 2018, things that we did not accomplish. I'm going to tell you, there's some of you that planned at the start of 2018 to end up at the end of the year different, but you ended up at the end of the year the same. I'm going to challenge you today to determine who you want to be at the end of 2019. Think of the person you want to be for 2019 and start today to become that person, one step at a time. If you want to be a powerhouse for God, you won't be that overnight, but start today to pray and seek God and be something God wants you to be. Start it today. This year also. That was the way you look at it, and you hear him plead, give me another year. Give me another time to do it. If you continually postpone and procrastinate being different, Year after years goes by, and you'll look back over your life and realize all my life has been spent projecting what I would do someday. I'm going to get up one of these days and I'm going to do something. The big resolutions that people have at the start of a new year, one of the main ones is losing weight. They're going to go to the gym. They're going to work out. They're going to get the ab burner. They're going to get the wash board. Oh, I don't know what the six. I was going to say six pack, but some of you say that's not really a Christian thing, I guess. If it's Coke Zero, it's okay. But he's going to get the washboard, abs, or like me, the wash tub. What happens, it's always good intentions. And sometimes if you stay around people that have it going on in God, it makes you feel like it's okay. Brandon used to bring home these videos. This is back in the days of VHS, for some of y'all that probably wouldn't remember this olden time. But it was videos about hunting and fishing. Bass fishing. Those guys would stand up that boat and they'd be throwing, they'd be reeling that, and then they'd be taking fish off the line, hold him up. Look, she's a beauty. And they put her back in. They'd throw that pole down to get another pole. They were throwing, this is the kind, this is doing this, and this is doing something else. It's the sound, and they were working it. And then the guys would be in the deer stand, and they didn't go through all the things about, I was crawling up in the stand, I slipped down, and I cut the side of my britches. They don't have that in there. They're just all sitting up there, and here comes the big buck. And they draw that bow. To me, there's just something about it. I used to shoot a bow when I was a kid, just a little plain little bow, but those rubber tips sometimes would come off, and it was a dangerous thing. But they get full draw, and then they release that arrow. And I watched that enough until I got to thinking, I can do this. What's to it? Standing up there in camouflage and war paint. He's just spotting him. How far is he? He's 35 yards, he's 40 yards, whatever it would be. And then setting the dial and just pulling it back and then releasing it. And if you watch it long enough, you feel like you can do it. If you're around it enough, you feel like you're an expert in it. I could tell you all about how to fish. I could tell you all about how to deer hunt and all of that, and how to kill coyotes and where to sit and how to call them and all that kind of thing. But as for me doing it, there is no way that I could do it. Number one, I don't want to be cold. Number two, I don't have the patience to sit out and wait on the coyotes to come. It's just not in me to do that. But what I'm saying is, when you're around Christians and you go to church and you're around the things of God and the privileges of God, after a while you feel like you're in this thing when really you're not really in it all the way. You really haven't bought into it. It's just enough for you for things to be good in your life. It really hasn't affected who you are. You need to pray until you are different in your life. That's it. I watched people in 2018 spend so much time trying to change their companion, trying to change their circumstances, trying to change some individual in their life to make something different by forcing it in by prayer. One of the main things that prayer is going to do is change who you are. And if you've got a companion that's acting up and not doing right, then what you need to do is change who you are, and it's going to change who they are, because they can't act the same when somebody is in their life who's different. Woo! This text to me mentions the mercy of God. God has put up with our vacillations and our hesitations for a whole year. And now he's ready for it to be different. But it's mercy that says this year also. Let's not delay. Let's say this year also. Let's don't promote another day. Let's don't say another time it's going to come. I will be different. I will act different. I will do the things that I should do. I will be a giver. I will be this. I will help people. I will make a difference. So many times it's so easy to get all burdened down with what's happening in the big wide world and forget what's going on in your own world. I mean, you could hurt people in 2018, and as far as you're concerned, you just go on with your life and don't worry about a thing. 2019, you need to fix it. You need to learn how to say, I'm sorry. Some of you at different times, you told me this, Brother Mason, we just really want hard preaching. You don't really want hard preaching. I'm fixing to tell you what hard preaching is. If you don't know how to say I'm sorry to your family, you don't know how to say I'm sorry to people that you hurt, you need to pray through. You don't have the Christian spirit. Your attitude is wrong. You do not have a Christian spirit if you can't take the humble side and say, I'm sorry. But I'd have to take out some of these chairs when I get through with you guys this year. I'm just telling you the absolute truth, that this is where you find out what it is. How in the world do you think Jesus is going to forgive you when you don't forgive people? This is not really going over. This is not a good thing for some of y'all. I mean, how are you going to do that? You can put your hair on top of your head until it looks like an explosion in a mattress factory. But that doesn't change one thing. If your attitude is horrible and your spirit is wrong and you have hatred in your life and you go against everything that you're supposed to do and you have no tenderness and love for God. Let me tell you how they know that you're disciples. It's not the blue jean skirt that drags in the ground that makes you one of the apostolics. He knows that you're disciples because you have love one toward another. If you're going to have that, you need to have love for each other. You ought to care about one another. This is not in my notes, but it should be. And maybe after service, one of y'all could put that in my notes, because I need to say this all throughout the year. Let's do this since we know what social media is. Let's do this, 2019. Let's leave all the other churches alone. It needs to be mind over matter. I don't mind and they don't matter. Quit worrying about what they're doing. Well, I'll tell you what, over there, oh my God, over there they're doing this. They got a pastor. Let him clean it up. Let him fix it up. Don't sit and get into debate with anybody. Quit getting into a holiness competition. We're more holy than them. Our sleeves are longer. Our pants are longer. Our socks are longer. You know, our tongues are longer. That's true. You can be showering in your clothes, and that doesn't cut any ice with God. You try to impress all the other people and what all's going on. Let's don't pastor the way other people are acting and what they're doing. And let's don't worry about how we feel about things because somebody else don't like us or somebody else loves us and we don't like what they're doing. Let's leave those churches alone. Let's let God handle that. That's a part of the kingdom somewhere else. Let's tend our own backyard. Let's mow our own grass. Let's pray through our own self. Let's worry about our own children. Let's get on fire for God in our own family. This year also, the mercy of God holds back the acts of judgment. There are times that God should have judged us for some of the things that we say and the things that we do. Well, some of you need to get off of the fence. You need to get in the church. Now, I'm not talking about in the building. I'm not talking about just, hey, smile, honk if you love Jesus and all of that kind of stuff. Well, I'm in the church. The other day I heard somebody say this on the radio. They said, and this is a person that lives a pitiful, pitiful lifestyle, an ungodly lifestyle. It would be like, I don't remember if it was Snoop Dogg or somebody. I don't even remember now who it was. But they said something about, but I give credit to the Lord. Jesus is my Lord. And before you keep saying Jesus is my Lord, you need to figure out who's calling the shots in your life. Who's calling the shots in your life? If it's your selfie that's doing it all, then Jesus is not your Lord. He's just your homeboy. He's just somebody following you around that you call on when you think you get into trouble, or you use him as somebody to say, I'm religious, looks like the rest of you. We don't need that kind of thing in 2019. What we need to do in 2019 is make up our mind. We're going to get off the fence and get in the church. We're going to be all the way in the church. Yeah. Some of you have been riding the fence so long, the crotch is out of your britches. Ride the fence all the time. Well, I'm in. I think this week I'm in. This week I'm not in. What week are you in? You need to get in all the way. You better hope the rapture doesn't take place while you're on the down note, while you're on the outside. If God's given you another year, seize it. If God's given you another year, grasp it. If God's given you another year, embrace it. If God has given you another year, run with it. Y'all notice the level of the service is going down, down, down. The more truth I speak to you. Paul said, did I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? He said, there was a time you would have taken your eyes out and given them to me. But now I become your enemy because I tell you the truth. The truth is we've got to be forgivers. The truth is we got to learn how to say I'm sorry. Elton John had a song. I'm not asking you to listen to this song, but he had a song called Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word. Sorry is the hardest word. It's just so hard for people to say it. I don't know if they feel like it denigrates their life or it makes them small. If you've done something and you know you've offended me and you come to me and say, Pastor, I just want you to know I'm sorry. I don't know what possessed me to say that about you, but I want you to know I do love you. Right then, you grew up in my eyes, because there's not probably 15 people in here that could even do that. And some of you are sitting there saying, I hope he don't call on me to do that, because I don't know if I can do that. I know you can't. You need to get the guts to do it. You need to learn how to do it. Because let me tell you this, if you're not saying I'm sorry to your family, you got dysfunction. You got to learn how to sit down and say, well, I flew off the handle. My son is here today, and you can ask my daughter also. There were plenty of times I flew off the handle. Brandon can tell you some of the stories. He laughs about them now. But they weren't funny when I did it, when I stomped his hat. And let me just redeem myself by saying this. Everything I did, he probably pushed all the buttons for it. He can probably tell you about him not moving his bicycle out of the driveway and me picking it up and throwing it over the cedar fence at the house, and all of the stuff. Our kids can tell you all the stuff. If you've never been bad, you've never been human. And so, but there's been so many times I've had to sit down and say, I spanked you before I found out the whole story. Sometimes I responded because somebody came, knocked on the door and said, hey, they tore up something. It's like, what did they tear up? Here's tore up this toy. It's be like, all right, they're going to pay the price for that. I never even thought about investigating it. Well, the boy actually tore up my toy first, and then when I tried to get it away from him, he grabbed it and he hit it with a hammer and he broke that. I never got a chance to get into all that, because in my mind, if he's done wrong, then it needs to be corrected. But I'd have to go back and say, I am sorry. If you don't teach your kids how to say I'm sorry, they won't be someone that can say I'm sorry either. You've got to be able to do that. This year, let's become a people. Yes, I don't mean let's don't ever do anything wrong. This was the funniest thing that ever happened to Sister Macey and I. We were talking to a young preacher out of our church. They was going to pastor it. We were trying to give them a little advice. And Sister Macey said, well, let me just tell you all this now. Whenever you're pastoring, you're going to have, you're going to make some mistakes. There's going to be times that you're going to make some mistakes. And this pastor now, he said, well, we're going to try real hard not to make any mistakes. Famous last words. We're going to try real hard not to make mistakes. And we just said, well, sometimes you do. We just try. Well, we didn't know that answer was coming. But I wanted to tell him, and I should have told him right then, let me just tell you what you do sometimes to have trouble in a church. Sometimes it's just show up. You didn't make a bad decision. You didn't do the wrong thing. You just drove on the driveway, and somebody was waiting there for you, and trouble was fixing to break out all over you. And this was going to be the moment. All the stuff that you were going to try. And I do know this person through this time, there's been lots of mistakes and there's been lots of retribution for those mistakes, but they were going to try real hard not to make any. You're going to make mistakes no matter how hard you try. We're not going to try to see how good we can be where we don't make mistakes. What we're going to do is get real good at, after we made a mistake, fixing that mistake, so that we can go and say, I'm sorry that it turned out like this. I didn't mean for it to be like that. And I want you to know I love you, and I'm not going to let anything get in the way. If not, you'll go through your life, and you'll get down to the end of your life, and there'll be family members you haven't even spoken to over things that you can't even remember what happened. And then over Pawpaw dying or Grandma dying or whatever, then you got to try to fix all of that back up over a casket. It's most the ridiculous thing that ever happened. Sometimes you just got to get together and put your arms around each other and say, I don't even remember what all we were fussing over, but I would like for you to forgive me. I want us to be together. I want us to have the relationship that we need to have, and let 25, 30, 40 years of stupid run out of you. You know, I didn't realize when I got up this morning that this was going to be so good. I had no idea. I'm blaming this on the Lord. Some of y'all think it's just meddling, but I feel like it's right from the Lord. I feel like people are going to watch this service later on. I feel like you're going to share it with somebody. You're going to say, you're not going to believe what my pastor says. Don't do it at home. This is only for professionals. This year also implies a limit. This year also. It's not unlimited, it's this year. Maybe God's telling us we don't have all the time in the world. This year also. Maybe it's just 2019 to turn the corner. I look around this congregation today and this group, just look around at yourself. I mean, every year I keep saying it's going to be our banner year, it's going to be our best year, and God does all kinds of things. He does wonderful things. Well, there were years that I said, this is going to be our best year, and it would be the worst year that we ever had. It'd be troubles and deaths and things that happen. But when he gives you that year, what do you do with it? You got to make a difference. You got to do something. You got to put yourself into something. Look, just working another year and making money, and I know some of you know this. In your heart of hearts, or in your head, or in your spirit, you've been thinking, the wheels are fixing to come off this thing. Our life is we're fixing to have the wheels come off of our life. Our home is not as strong as it should be. Our marital relationship is not as good. We don't even talk about some of the things. We're angry with each other. We're hateful toward one another. We answer to each other in a testy manner. But we get along. We've been together now 15 years. What's our trouble? Well, this year, you may pass a mark and look back and say, all those years, we should have fixed stuff. Well, Pastor, I don't even know what to go back and fix. Sometimes you don't. You don't have to go back and start naming everything. Let me tell you, if you've done a bunch of sinning in 2018 and you hadn't got it forgiven, you will not have to come up here in a few minutes and start naming that one by one. We're going to be eating while you're naming it. Lord, I just wanted to, I lied, and Lord, I just wanted because I was mean to this and all that. And there may even be people in this church that will come back for communion. It's like, they're still here. And Lord, I kicked the dog, and Lord, I said this, and Lord, I did something else, and all of that. I mean, we all have that, you know, where we get upset about things. We have those kind of situations. But look, it doesn't take that from the Lord. You just ask God, forgive me. Lord, I'm sorry. You can't even remember what you did. When you came to the Lord and you'd been a drinker and you caroused around, some of you in drugs and other things, you couldn't even ask God to forgive you. Some things you can't even remember the good time you had. So how could you say, forgive me? Lord, you remember that Saturday night? No, you can't even remember. You don't even remember how you got home. You just have to say, Lord, forgive me. And then he just encapsulates it into one big deal and gives you the mercy to cover all of it. So in life, in your family, in your children, Listen, you don't have to go down and start naming stuff. You don't have to start pulling out stuff. You don't have to bring up hurtful things. All you got to do is just put that together in a big, let's move forward in this. I'm sorry we've let this stuff go. I'm sorry this has happened like it's happened. Please forgive. Let's kneel down together. I've even had my kids lay hands on me and pray for me. Pastor, aren't you the guy with the hand? Aren't you the one that's supposed to be putting a claw on everybody else? No, the best thing that could ever happen is for my family to pray for me. Know that I don't have it all together. We need to work this thing together. We're in this together. I want my family to pray for me. I'm going to pray for my family. We pray about every kind of situation that you can possibly imagine. Last but not least, let me tell you this in closing. This was something that just, I guess, maybe just jumped out at me. That if you don't put behind you a failed last year, it's going to hinder the promises of a successful new year. If you don't put behind you the failed last year, it's going to hinder the promise of a successful new year. And I thought this was so strange, and this is what the Lord talked to me about last night, and I hope it doesn't sound ugly, or I hope it doesn't sound uncomfortable when I mention this. But the Lord said in his parable, the dresser of the vineyard said, let me dig about it. In other words, dig it up, dig around it, loosen the soil about it. And then let me dung it. Think about that. What they pick up out of the barnyard, it's sold in nurseries as fertilizer. But that's where it comes from. How horrible to use dung, manure, that barnyard fertilizer in reference to human beings. He's talking about people. And he says, dig and dung. He uses that terminology. This is the form of growth stimuli that the Lord encourages. Dung. Stop and think about it. Let me say it like this. If you feel like you've been in a mess, Jesus intended you to grow in it. If you feel like around you is the stench of unrighteousness, unfaithfulness, ugliness of attitude and spirit, it stinks. Life stinks. He intended that to be the thing that caused you to grow up. I didn't say that. Jesus used that. You can stand in the mess and say it's terrible. It's unfair. Life stinks. Others don't have what I have. But Jesus intended it to be what will make you grow into fruitfulness. This is a little heavier than probably what some of you are really prepared for, but sometimes Mara, the bitter waters, is better than the sweet waters at Elam. Sometimes your resistances propels you greater distances than all of the stuff that can be behind you, and the sailing be great and everything be wonderful. You won't learn a lot there. But when you have to stand in the dung pile like Job. Job sat on a dung pile. All of that was collected out of the barnyard, they piled it up in a big pile over behind the house somewhere, and they would let it all deteriorate, and then they would go get it and they would put it in the garden, or they would put it around the plants. And when he was in his condition, he goes and sits out on a dung pile. But it's there he comes to the recognition, though he slay me, I'm going to trust him. And that though the skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh I'll see God. He had revelation in the mess. If you'd stop just a minute and quit saying it's horrible, it's bad, it's the worst thing that could ever happen, and realize that the husbandman, the one that dresses the vineyard of your life, he chose the form sometimes of putting you in a messy situation so that you would grow in it instead of always trying to move out of it. Let God do something wonderful. Any plant can grow in the hothouse, but God was going to cause you to be thriving even when you felt like you were planted in the outhouse. Anybody can flourish in the greenhouse. It's protected. But what about when everything assails you and everything's against you and everything is stinking around you and it's nothing but mess and chaos around you? How do you respond there? And the Lord said, listen, if they're going to be fruitful, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I want you to dig around them, get their life uprooted a little bit. Let there be some uncomfortable situation there, and then put dung around there, because there's going to be something in that that's going to cause them to grow in a stature in which they've never been in before. You are not finished in your life. You're not done. This is not the Ichabod over the door. You've got many more things God's going to do in your life, and the thing we've got to do is move forward in Him. Stand with me. Now, if you had something that happened in your family, I talk by experience. Our family has had all kinds of difficulties in our life. Both sides of our family, my wife's side, our side. We have been working so hard to get all that out. We write each other all the time. If you read the carnally texts between all of us, it'd just be sickening to you. We talk about how much we love each other and how we want to go on vacation again, and oh, how wonderful it is, what's going on in your kids. Let me just tell you, that's a better life than figuring out a way to ignore somebody. It's a lot better life. My side of the family, same deal. We gather at Christmas and having a big time at Brittany's. Brittany hosted the celebration, and I mean, Keith, Alyssa, all of us, we were all there, and everybody has like 5 kids. I don't know, I think they have 3. Brandon has 3. Brittany has 7. There's a couple of them there that count as 2. Lawson, that's 2. And then a host of others. Well, we just talked about how much we loved each other. Let's get back together. Oh, how wonderful everything is. That's such a better life. Sometimes you've got to come to the end of the rope, and sometimes you've got to realize I got another year. My mom and dad not going to live forever. Mom's always got something that she wants to tell us before she can open her gift. We always got to get the speech. My Granny Jones used to tell us every year, this is probably going to be my last year. 15 years later, she told us for the final time. But we always got the speech. Y'all need to come see us. Y'all need to do this. Y'all need to do that. And we just listen to it, and we go on about life as we're supposed to. But you realize they will not always be there. And you can lament to the day you die things that you wish you would have said and wished you would have done. And if you've ever lost anybody, you know what this is. And I'm not saying that we haven't all done that. I've done that. I know what that is. But then those that are left behind, you realize that I've got to give them what I'm going to give them now. I've got to love like I've never loved before. I've got to care like I've never cared before. I want to end this with us together at the front, if you don't mind doing that. Would you just come and stand here with me for a second? I don't want to make you tired. I've already made you stand for a few minutes. I meant to have you come right away. Come on up. Get up close to the front, because we gave a little more aisle space, get a little more front room space. Guest, everybody, come on, everybody that can. If you can't, just come up to the front and sit up in one of the chairs at the front. Just come on up as close as you can. We just want to be together at the end. I was reminded today how sobering and how serious what we do here really is. Keep moving up. Come on, push up. When you were dating, you wanted to be close. Thank y'all for being here. God bless you. God bless you. One of our little boys, little Kyle Free, used to sit on the front row. Y'all remember the Frees? He'd sit on the front row with Sister Macey, and he was a little boy then. He'd hold her hand, him and his little brother. They thought she was the greatest thing in the world, the most beautiful thing in the world, which that has not changed. She still is that. But I may have told you this or may not have told you this, but we got word just a few weeks ago that Kyle was killed, murdered in Colorado. Girlfriend had some guys come in and killed him, and then they tried, there's some damage to his body. He had a couple of tattoos, and so they took something, tried to burn off the tattoo so they wouldn't identify him, and for a long time they hadn't found his body. And although I hadn't seen him in years, I was just so grieved. Sister Macey and I just kept talking about it, because it's like it's one of our boys. It was in our church. We had a guy that came to our church, and he and his wife, they were in our church, and it's been many years ago, and they had 2 or 3 kids, and there was a custody battle, and he went crazy and got into drugs and all kinds of things, and he got the kids one time and drove over to Louisiana and went out in the woods with a shotgun, killed all the children, and killed himself. He'd sit right in our church. One of our families, mother, requested prayer for a son who went in the hospital just a few days ago, fighting some battles with drugs. Then Tammy and Anthony Brandis used to be in our church. I grew up with Tammy's daddy, Nathan. Nathan's boy, N.A., which was Tammy's brother. Just a few days ago, staying at his dad's house, his dad went in to check on him one morning. He was already cold, stiff, died sometime during the night. He had visited our church, family connected with our church. Goes all the way back to my childhood with Nathan Morris and Gerald and the whole family. All of those things, I'm not telling you that I just sit around in a depressed state. I sit around in a sober state. We are playing for keeps. I don't want to use the word playing, but you know what I'm talking about in marbles. When you start playing for keeps, you keep the marble. It's not just, okay, everybody give everything back. We're at a time where lives are being taken and lost. People that are in our congregation are battling things that people have never battled before. I look at our students. They have things that they go through, but look, before you down them, they have things that we never had to deal with. They're dealing with it. Where's the benefit of the doubt? If they didn't love him, they wouldn't come to his house. They'd move out and live on their own and do what they wanted to do. They wouldn't be respectful and care. They just go through things. Why don't we purpose to do something different this year? Let's love like we've never loved one another. Let's pray like we've never prayed for each other. Let's resist the world and refrain from evil like we've never done before. Don't play patty cake with evil in the world and think you're not going to be affected. Let's pray together today. The last Sunday of the new year, or the old year bringing in the new year, I want us to ask God to forgive us. God, if we haven't done it right, would you please forgive us? If I haven't been what I've needed to be, forgive me. Lord, if there's a greater passion I need, I pray, Lord, that you would help me to have it. I don't want to be paralyzed by the loss in my childhood or in my youth. This year also, put Royalwood on your list. Turn us every way you can, but don't turn us loose. Dig around us, Lord. Make us a fertile field. Let that mess of life that we stand in be the thing that causes us to bring forth much fruit. We need you in this hour. We need your presence. Let the gifts of your Spirit operate. Let the Holy Ghost overshadow everybody in this building. Let communion service Wednesday night be the catalyst.
Thanks for watching this video. If it has blessed you in any way, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel by clicking the button to your right. Also, if you'd like to partner with Royalwood Church to reach more people with the gospel of Jesus Christ, click the Give Now button to your right as well. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.